Hi, so if it isn't obvious, this is my first time attempting anything like this, so there's a decent chance I'm missing something or not explaining something well enough, so definitely let me know in the comments. And if this video gets big enough, I'll probably make a follow-up. Okay, bye. The final tragedy of Deltarune's prophecy is one of the most theorized things in the game, second only to the identity of the knight. It's intentionally hidden from the player, but with how much Ralsei tries to hide it from specifically Susie, it definitely seems to involve her. After Susie sees it, she tells Ralsei, obviously you wouldn't let it happen. There's been a lot of debate on what this line means. Would Ralsei not let it happen since it directly involves him? Or is it just because he's the type of person to not let a tragedy like that happen? The lines in this entire section are so vague that the theories of this final tragedy vary wildly. Some think the Dark World's permanently closed, some think that Susie sacrifices herself, and when I first played it, I thought it was the death of Noelle. But now, I think it's the death of a different party member, Ralsei. It's no secret that Ralsei is weird. It's revealed already that he knows the entire prophecy, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's hiding even more. But by far the weirdest thing he's done is repeat the notion that he and all the other Darkners don't matter. He is the only Darkner who thinks like this. He even goes so far as to leave his room completely empty, unlike every other Darkner who has a room. So, why? Why is he the only Darkner to have this mindset? Is it because he knows the true natures of what Darkners are? No. Ram talks to Chris about how they and Azrael used to play with the objects that eventually became Darkners. And Tenna has all his memories from before Chris's Dark Fountain opened. So, no. The Darkners absolutely know what they are, and they're unaffected by it. So really, why is Ralsei the only one to think like this? I think that's because Ralsei knows the whole prophecy, and knows that the ending is his death. After all, if I knew I was guaranteed to die in 3 days, and that couldn't be changed, I also wouldn't decorate my room and think I don't matter. Now you might be screaming, whoa, whoa, whoa. He said this whole Darkners don't matter speech to Tenna, and even though Tenna can die if you don't spare everyone, it's not like Ralsei knew that. Well, what do you know? Tenna's attack is part of the prophecy, and Ralsei knew it was coming. But he told him that he didn't matter. Of course it didn't help him feel better, but I don't think he said it for Tenna. I think he said it for Susie. That way if Tenna did end up dying from the attack, Susie would feel less bad about it, since she'd think he didn't matter. Susie is obviously against Darkners not mattering, even going directly against Ralsei to tell Tenna that he does indeed matter, but this never stopped Ralsei from believing it. So that means we've only seen Ralsei's whole Darkners don't matter, go make some real friends spiel with Tenna, who we knew was at risk of death, and himself. Huh. But why do Darkners not matter? If the final tragedy is the prince is sacrificed or something like that, wouldn't he be the only one to not matter? Why does he say that every other Darkner doesn't matter? I think he's lying. It's pretty common now to just say that Ralsei's lying about anything. I mean, maybe he should have just been more trustworthy, but oh well. But I really do think his mentality of Darkners not mattering is just a lie to make Susie feel better. Just like what I said about Tenna earlier, if Ralsei died, it would be way easier for Susie to cope if she was under the impression that Ralsei wasn't special, and that all Darkners aren't important. Unfortunately for him, Susie doesn't believe that for 1 second. I think Ralsei's line about Susie being so nice is essentially him admitting defeat with trying to make Susie believe his lies. So, there we go. The final tragedy is that Ralsei dies. That's why Susie says he obviously wouldn't let it happen. That's why Ralsei thinks he doesn't matter and doesn't decorate his room. And why directly after smashing the prophecy and seeing the tragedy, Susie says, "Can I tell you a stupid dream I have? No matter what, I want to keep being friends with you and Ralsei. When the sun comes up again, I want tomorrow to be the same as yesterday, and the next day to be just the same as that we can always go back to the way things were before." Does this not sound like something you'd say after finding out your friend was destined to die in a place that couldn't be erased? So now we've nailed down that Ralsei dies in the final tragedy. But how? And is it murder? Is Ralsei killed by someone? Well, remember what I said earlier? Ralsei desperately tries to prevent specifically Susie from seeing the final tragedy, and this is not a one-off instance. It seems like he'd do anything to prevent Susie from seeing it. Chris, though, he couldn't care less, which means that Susie's definitely involved in this final tragedy. Well, since we now know that said tragedy is Ralsei's death, the girl kills the prince. There we go. Video over, mind blown. Except, there's more. But to explain it, I have to open up a whole new can of worms. The multiple girls theory. This has essentially been accepted by the Deltarune community as fact already, so you probably know exactly what it is, but if you don't, here's an extremely summarized version. Susie's messed up Dark World shows the prophecy out of order. This prophecy panel says that the girl is second, and then another prophecy panel says that the girl is last, meaning that there's 2 girls involved in the prophecy. Since the second mention of the girl shows the Rude Buster symbol, this girl's Susie, and the second hero is actually Noelle. Further evidence of this is that Ralsei says Susie's supposed to equip ribbons, and yet she refuses. I actually can't find where this theory originated from, but if I do, I'll put it in the description. But again, this theory has essentially been accepted as fact because, yeah, it seems exactly right. How the prophecy continues as normal when one of the heroes isn't here? I don't know, this video wasn't about that. So Noelle is actually the second hero of the prophecy. Glad we got that settled. But you may be thinking, why does any of that matter? Ralsei knows the prophecy. He knows that Susie isn't the second hero, but he specifically stopped Susie from seeing it because he knows that the final tragedy involves Susie. Right? He has no idea. Ralsei views the prophecy as the game wants us to, that the two girls are the same, both Susie. Even though he does know the prophecy, even he got confused with the stupid wording. So if the final prophecy is indeed the girl kills the prince, that means that Ralsei doesn't know which girl, which unfortunately means that we don't either. I really think I built up a strong case for the final tragedy panel being Ralsei's death, but when it comes to which of the two girls kills him, I can't make nearly as strong as a case. There's two candidates, each with reasons for possibly being Ralsei's murderer. Let's start with Susie. If this whole prophecy Ralsei dies stuff came up in chapter 1, it would have obviously been Susie. She literally almost killed Chris before remembering how kind their mom was to her. But now, Susie has had so much growth. Maybe the most I've ever seen from a fictional character. The same person who was hitting things with her axe for fun 3 days ago now wants to abandon her combat for healing. And as evident by the lines from earlier, Susie would not kill Ralsei. Her anger can flare up, most notably seen in chapter 4 after the Gerson statue was killed, but looking at her face, she seems much more sad than angry. I guess maybe in a burst of rage she could accidentally kill Ralsei before immediately regretting it, but I don't know. I just don't think that could happen with the Susie we're currently seeing. Unless you count the Shadow Crystal prophecy theory. Guess I'm explaining that one now. This is shorter than the other one I had to explain. It's just that when you look through the Shadow Crystal in the Light World, Susie looks mean and angry. The theory is that Susie being the second hero already breaks the prophecy, and that the Shadow Crystal in the Light World shows what should be happening. Susie's role is supposed to just be the second hero's lover. But in our broken prophecy, she's the second party member. Which I guess could mean that in this broken prophecy, since Ralsei's killer is now in the wrong spot, he doesn't die at all, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Overall, this is all I was able to scrape together for Susie being Ralsei's killer. Her anger that could flare up, and maybe the Shadow Crystal Light World stuff. So let's move on to our second candidate, Noelle. If Noelle truly is the second hero of the prophecy, we'll probably start seeing much more of her next chapter. Which means most of the evidence I could be using for this is not here yet. Truth be told, I think chapter 5 and 6 will be the last 2 chapters to follow any of the story that we have now, and then chapter 7 will be Gaster Friend Death Shelter shenanigans. So I think we'll be seeing much more Noelle in the next 2 chapters, but for now, there's not too much to go off of. My weakest point that I can present is that she's the only person who can kill Darkners. I mean, other than the Titan spawns, but do those even count as Darkners? And the weird root existing as a whole could very much point to this goat being the next Birdly, but that's just the weird route. In the normal route, you wouldn't see either of the 2 things I just mentioned. I think since Noelle is just gonna not be herself anymore, judging by the chapter 4 weird route, it's safe to lock in Noelle as the killer of Ralsei in the weird route. But what about the normal route? I don't know. I know that sucks, but I have literally no idea. I was so confident in this theory until I got here. I'm very confident that Ralsei dies in the final tragedy, and I'm also pretty sure that Noelle kills him in the weird route. But here, I have no idea. If I had to pick, I'd say that Noelle also kills him in the normal route, just because I can't see Susie doing it. It also follows the whole one ending thing that Toby's been saying, so yeah, I think Ralsei's death is the final tragedy, and that's carried out by the intended second party member. That was where I left it. That was where I wanted to leave it. But I wasn't satisfied with that ending. So I kept thinking, is there anything else I could add to this theory? And then, I remembered something. The sword route. The sword route is the weird route. Plain and simple. You kill Birdly, go through the same manhole as chapter 2, and maybe kill all of Hometown, watch Roots Theory. But there's something big that happens in the sword route that isn't in the weird route yet. And I'm not talking about how we might kill people in Hometown because the layout's similar. I'm talking about this. There's nothing hidden here. That's straight up Ralsei and Susie being killed by the player. Not Chris, as they look away from the screen when you do it. I was of the belief that this wasn't literal. After all, we need these 2, asterisk, for the prophecy. The killing of these 2 is probably like abandoning them for something power up Noelle. But once you look at this through the lens of Ralsei's death, it becomes a lot more interesting. Let's pretend that I'm 100% right about everything I've said. Noelle kills Ralsei at the end of the prophecy. Now, how on earth does the player killing Ralsei and Susie fit into this? Well, let's go back to what I said earlier about Ralsei saying that Susie's super nice. There's more to this dialogue in the weird route. He says, I want to believe that it can change, that there isn't just one ending. But what would that be? If there was something else, what would it be? And how do we know it wouldn't be something even worse? Something worse, you say? Something that's only in the weird route? This cannot be a throwaway line. How Ralsei doesn't know if something in the prophecy can change? I don't know. So update the chart. Normal route, Noelle kills Ralsei. Weird route, she kills Ralsei and Susie. And if you think she wouldn't do that, I turn your attention to Birdly. Not her killing him, since she didn't know that spell, but the fact that she didn't even recognize him at first. And if a couple hours of the player's manipulation makes her not immediately recognize her best friend, imagine what would happen with a few days of the player's manipulation when she sees Susie. I'm starting to really not like the weird root. Now how does the player fit into this? Or, I'm just going to call them the soul from now on because it's easier to understand. I said Noelle kills Susie and Ralsei in the weird root, but wouldn't it be the soul? After all, the soul's the one who kills them in the sword root. Well, let's look back at Chapter 4's weird root. In this, you stick the thorn ring back into Noelle, which does... this? We currently have zero clue what this is. Well, I mean, other than knowing that it isn't that. But a good theory I've seen, that I also don't remember where it came from, sorry, is that we're either giving her a soul or sharing possession of our soul. Which is why we can hear Noelle from the Dark World in Chapter 4. Either way, we as the player will have control of Noelle in the future of the weird root. I believe this is exactly what's going to happen in the weird root. Player control Noelle kills Ralsei to satisfy the ending of the prophecy, and Susie, for some reason? Maybe it's so that Chris can date Noelle, which would follow up on them going to the festival together in Chapter 5, but I really hope not because that's sad. As for the normal route, unfortunately I have to leave it here. There's not nearly enough evidence to say anything more about it, which unfortunately means that Noelle killing Ralsei on the normal route is the weakest part of this theory. But that's it! Let me know what you thought of this, or tell me to die because I forgot a tiny detail that disproves everything. Either way, Deltarune's been a giant hyperfix for me for a while now, so I'm happy to finally get a video out for it. If you're one of my fans of the My Slinky Monsters videos, don't worry, those aren't going anywhere. Anyway, see you guys later. Maybe I'll make a follow-up. Bye.